He told me not to joke about cheating again. So I did. On his birthday. Looking back, the cake was the only thing that stayed, a monument to my spectacular failure. But even now, a small part of me, the part that still feels the sting of injustice, I still don't get why he couldn't just take a joke. I'm Rowan, 28, and this all really started 3 years into my marriage with Leland. It was the year I discovered how truly, deeply entertaining it was to watch my own husband squirm. It began innocently enough. Of course it did. We were at a dinner, one of his stuffy work things at some downtown steakhouse with dark wood and low lighting, the kind of place where the waiters call you ma'am, and the water glasses are never empty. Leland. Charming, dependable Leland. Talking about quarterly reports and market projections. I was nursing a glass of Merlot, trying my best to look engaged while mentally redecorating our guest bathroom. Then he said it, the words that lit the fuse. Yeah, the team and I were burning the midnight oil all last week to get the Henderson account finalized, he said, a note of pride in his voice. An opportunity, a perfect, gleaming, irresistible opportunity. I leaned forward, placing my hand gently on his arm, and let a small, conspiratorial smirk play on my lips. I made sure his boss, a balding man named Arthur, could see. Yeah, sure, I said, my voice just loud enough to cut through the low chatter. Burning the midnight oil? With Corinne from marketing? The table went silent. Utterly, perfectly, silent. You could have heard a pin drop on the thick carpet. Leland's face. Oh, his face. It was a masterpiece. It flushed this perfect shade of crimson, a slow-blooming rose of pure, unadulterated discomfort. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just looked, trapped. Arthur, his boss, let out a short, awkward laugh. A little ha that died in his throat. A few other people shuffled their silverware, and in that moment of collective awkwardness, I felt a jolt, a thrill. It was oddly, wonderfully satisfying, like finding a new power I never knew I possessed. I had taken this predictable, stable man, my husband, and with just a few words, I had made him the most interesting person in the room. I had made him vulnerable. Just like that, I discovered my new favorite pastime, making Leland jealous. Not enough to actually cause a real problem, of course, just enough to keep him on his toes, to remind him not to get too comfortable. You see, Leland always had this thing about being the good guy. Mr. Reliable. The man everyone at the investment firm depended on. Too dependable, if you ask me. His idea of a wild Friday night was ordering pizza and watching a documentary about urban planning. Sometimes, I'd scroll through his boring work texts while he showered. Just to check, you know. Nothing was ever there. Just schedules and spreadsheets and polite sign-offs. It was almost disappointing. I was just making sure. Keeping him honest. The joke became my thing, my signature. At gatherings, I was the witty wife with the edgy sense of humor. Don't worry about Leland being late, I'd tell our friends Sloane and Grant over brunch. He was probably just dropping off his other wife and kids first. Everyone would laugh. A little uncomfortably at first, but then they'd get used to it. It was just Rowan being Rowan. Grant would chuckle and shake his head. Sloane would sometimes give me a look, a little flicker of something I couldn't quite decipher, but Leland, he'd just try to smile through it. A tight, strained smile that never, ever reached his tired eyes. And I loved it. I loved comparing him to other men. It was my way of motivating him. Did you see Grant surprise Sloane with those concert tickets? I'd ask casually while we were doing the dishes. He's so thoughtful. Just because. Leland would sigh. That weary, world on his shoulders sigh. Rowan, we talked about this. We're saving for the down payment on the house. We have a budget. But I knew what he was really saying. He wasn't trying hard enough. The budget was just an excuse. The hypocrisy? Well, I didn't see it as hypocrisy at the time. I saw it as setting boundaries. My phone was my private space. full of group chats with my girlfriends, silly memes, and, okay, the occasional harmlessly flirtatious text. It was my world. Leland, on the other hand, had no concept of privacy. One time, he picked up my phone from the nightstand, just to check the time. The screen was dark, he just picked it up, and I nearly lost it. "What are you doing?" I snapped, my voice sharp enough to cut glass. I snatched it from his hand like he was holding a venomous snake. "Why are you spying on me?" The look on his face? It was priceless. Pure shock. Utter confusion. Like I'd caught him red-handed trying to hack into a bank vault, when all he wanted was to know if it was 7 or 7:30. He just stood there, speechless. I felt a surge of victory. See? He didn't get to have it both ways. He didn't get to be Mr. Perfect while secretly trying to control me. The first time he actually confronted me about the jokes, it was after a barbecue at our house. I'd made a comment about the pretty new paralegal at his firm, wondering aloud if she knew he was married. In front of his mentee, no less. Later that night, he was standing in our kitchen. Still in his work clothes, his tie loosened. He looked genuinely upset. His shoulders were slumped. "Rowan," he began, his voice all serious. "Those jokes, they make me uncomfortable." 9. I was scrolling through Instagram, half listening. The cheating jokes, he clarified as if I didn't know. They're embarrassing. And they're hurtful. Oh my God. I looked up from my phone and rolled my eyes. I made sure he saw it. "Leland, it's a joke. It's just a joke. Everyone else thinks it's funny, but I don't." "Well, you're being way too sensitive," I said, turning my attention back to the glowing screen. "I found a picture of a puppy and liked it. Besides," I added, unable to resist twisting the knife just a little, "if you weren't so boring sometimes, I wouldn't need to spice things up." That hit a nerve. I could see it in the way his jaw tightened, the muscle ticking just beneath his skin. "Why?" he asked, his voice quiet now. Dangerously quiet. "Why do you feel the need to put me down in front of people who respect me?" "Put you down?" I scoffed, standing up. I walked over and patted his cheek, the way you'd pat a child. Condescendingly. "I'm just having fun. You need to lighten up. Not everything is a personal attack on you, Leland." He just stared at me, and in his eyes, I saw something break. Just a little. I didn't care. I thought I'd won. He tried to bring it up again, a week later. We were having dinner with his father, Richard, a quiet, gentle man who always looked slightly intimidated by me. I found it amusing. Leland was on his phone, checking an email from work. "Careful, Richard," I said to his dad with a wink. "Your son is probably texting his girlfriend under the table." I laughed. Leland's head snapped up. His eyes were flinty. "Rowan, stop. We talked about this." His voice was firm. Serious. It was the tone he used on conference calls, not on me. I didn't like it. I turned to his dad, putting on my best performance of wronged innocence. "We're just having fun, right, Richard?" Leland's being dramatic again. His dad cleared his throat. He shifted in his chair, suddenly fascinated by his water glass. "Well, Rowan, maybe there's a time and a place for certain jokes." "Great, of course he'd take Leland's side. He always did. His mom would have said the same thing, if she ever bothered to show up when I was around. We'd had this weird tension ever since I'd made some comments about her cooking at our wedding reception. Now, she just conveniently had migraines whenever we were invited over. We just sort of avoided each other at family functions. Her loss. Later that night, back at home, Leland actually raised his voice, which was rare for him, a unicorn event. "This isn't funny anymore, Rowan. I've asked you. I have repeatedly asked you to stop with the cheating jokes." He was pacing the living room. I was sitting on the couch, pretending to be absorbed in a magazine. I did what always worked. I turned it around on him. "Why are you so insecure?" I asked, my voice dripping with faux concern. "If you weren't hiding something, you wouldn't be so defensive about it. Is there something you need to tell me, Leland? His face fell. Exactly how I expected. The anger drained out of him, replaced by a look of weary defeat. I knew I'd won that round. Of course, I conveniently forgot all the times he'd asked me to stop when, 2 months later, I hinted to our friends that Leland's late nights might involve his attractive new intern. He confronted me again, of course. By now it was a tedious little dance we did. But I genuinely couldn't understand why he was still harping on this. You said that weeks ago, I reminded him, exasperated. Are you seriously keeping score of every little thing I say? That's not healthy, Leland. Oh, looking back, I should have seen the warning signs. How he stopped sharing stories from work. How his smile didn't reach his eyes anymore when I made one of my jokes. How he started to look through me, instead of at me. But honestly, I was having too much fun. I was pushing his buttons, watching him try to stay calm while I knew exactly how to get under his skin. It became a game I couldn't stop playing. The day he drew the line in the sand, it was almost comical. We were at a friend's anniversary party. I'd had a bit too much champagne. I made a joke about Leland sleeping with the host's sister. It wasn't even a good one. It was lazy. But it got the intended reaction, a sudden, chilling silence. In the car on the way home, he was quiet. Not angry quiet. Something else. Something cold and still. He pulled into our driveway, turned off the engine, but didn't move to get out. He just sat there, staring at the garage door. Rowan, he said, his voice flat, devoid of all emotion. What now? I sighed, already bored with the impending lecture. He turned to look at me. The streetlights cast strange shadows across his face. His eyes were dark pools. If you joke about me cheating one more time, he said, each word a carefully placed stone, you're going to regret it. For a second, I was taken aback by the intensity, the absolute finality in his tone. But then, the thrill returned. A challenge. My mind just screamed, challenge accepted. Things started getting weird after that. Donovan Leland, he stopped telling me about work events unless they were absolutely necessary. When I'd ask who was going to be there, he'd just say, the usual people, and change the subject. And then there was the phone. I noticed he'd started keeping it face down on the nightstand. He took it with him into the bathroom, even for quick showers. Obviously, I checked it the second I got the chance. He was in the yard, mowing the lawn. I grabbed the phone off the kitchen counter. I swiped up, enter passcode. A new passcode. Seriously? What was he hiding? When he came back inside, smelling of cut grass and sweat, I was waiting for him. Changed your password? I asked, my arms crossed. I tried to sound casual, but a sharp edge crept into my voice. Trying to keep secrets now? I thought you said going through each other's phones was spying, he shot back. He didn't even look at me as he walked to the fridge to get a bottle of water. Your words, not mine. God, he was so annoying when he used my own arguments against me. That's different, I insisted. I have nothing to hide. Neither do I, Rowan, he said, finally looking at me over the top of the water bottle. I just want some basic privacy. Privacy. What a joke. What was he hiding in his privacy? As Leland's 32nd birthday started approaching, I noticed he hadn't mentioned any plans. Usually, he'd drop hints for weeks. A restaurant he wanted to try. A weekend trip to the mountains. This year? Nothing. Avoid. Fine. I'd plan something myself. Something spectacular. I'd show everyone, Sloane, his father, all of them, what a thoughtful, amazing wife I was. Maybe I had finally proved to Leland that he was being ridiculous about everything. Maybe this was his way of surrendering. I went all out. I rented the private back room at his favorite Italian restaurant. Ordered that ridiculous 7-layer chocolate cake he loves from the fancy bakery across town. I invited all our remaining friends, plus some of his coworkers. Even got his dad to agree to come, which was a minor miracle considering how awkward things had been lately. His mom, predictably, had plans she couldn't change, whatever. The whole time I was planning, Leland seemed distracted, distant. He'd been taking these mysterious phone calls, stepping outside onto the porch to talk, which was new. One night, I heard him mention something about getting everything in order before he hung up quickly when I walked into the room. When I asked who it was, he just said, "Work stuff," and changed the subject. I tried checking his recent calls, but of course, his phone was locked with that stupid new passcode. My friend Sloane had been acting weird too, canceling our usual coffee dates, being vague about her schedule. Part of me, the ugly, paranoid part, wondered if there was something going on between them. It was ridiculous, of course. She'd been with Grant forever. But still, the thought planted itself in my brain and started to grow weeds. 2 days before the party, I was at the boutique where I worked part-time. Kian came in. Kian was one of our regular customers. Tall, charming, with that kind of easy smile that made most women blush. He always flirted with me. He'd been texting me occasionally. Nothing serious. Just friendly stuff with a hint of something more. Leland would have hated it if he knew. Which is precisely why I kept my phone locked and never, ever mentioned Kian's name. As I was ringing up his purchase, another gift for his sister that I suspected was just an excuse to come see me, a brilliant idea hit me. The ultimate plan, the final act, the joke that would finally, once and for all, make Leland see how ridiculous his jealousy was. It would lighten the mood and snap him out of whatever funk he'd been in. "Hey, Kian," I said casually, leaning against the counter. "Hey, Rowan, what's up? What are you doing Saturday night?" The surprise on his face was priceless. Nothing planned. Why?" "My husband's having a birthday party," I said, a slow smile spreading across my face. "And I think you should come." "Oh." He looked equal parts confused and thrilled. "Really? You want me to meet your husband?" "Absolutely," I purred, leaning in closer. "It'll be fun. Just play along with whatever I say, okay? I'm planning a little joke to lighten the mood." Kian grinned, clearly thinking this was heading somewhere exciting. "I'm in. Text me the details." That night, I lay in bed next to Leland, who was reading some boring book about economic theory instead of paying attention to me. And I crafted my perfect plan. I'd set up a series of suggestive texts with Kian. I'd leave my phone, screen up, where Leland would accidentally see them during the party. Then, Kian would show up, unannounced. Leland would get all jealous and worked up. And then, surprise! It would all be revealed as a hilarious birthday prank. Everyone would laugh. Leland would finally see how much he overreacted about everything. And we could finally go back to normal. It was foolproof. It was brilliant. The day of the party, I was in a great mood. Everything was perfect. The private room at the restaurant looked beautiful. Decorations, cake, a dedicated waiter. I'd even bought a new dress, a slinky red number that I knew Leland used to love on me. He barely seemed to notice when I put it on, but his loss. As I finished my makeup, I texted Kian to confirm our plan. His reply came immediately. "Can't wait to finally meet the famous Leland. This is going to be a night to remember." I smiled at my reflection. It certainly was. The party started well enough. People arrived, drinks flowed. Leland was doing that thing where he pretends everything's fine in public, even though I knew he was still mad about some stupid fight we'd had earlier that week. He was the perfect host. Smiling, shaking hands. His dad showed up with a gift-wrapped box and that awkward smile that said he'd rather be anywhere else. Sloane and Grant came late. Sloane barely made eye contact with me when I hugged her. Whatever. I'd deal with her weirdness later. Speech. I clinked my glass as everyone got settled. I stood up, beaming. "I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate my amazing husband," I began, placing my hand on Leland's shoulder and squeezing a little too hard. 32 years of being the most dependable, predictable man I know. A few uncomfortable laughs rippled through the room. Leland's jaw tightened, but he kept that plastic smile plastered on his face. "Seriously, though," I continued, unable to stop myself. "No one knows how to work late like my Leland. I winked directly at Corinne from his office, who shifted uncomfortably in her seat. Just kidding. Or am I? More awkward laughter. Leland took a long sip of his scotch, his eyes fixed straight ahead. Perfect. The stage was set. As planned, I left my phone on the table when I went to check on the cake. I made sure the screen was facing up, notifications visible. I took my time in the back, chatting with the restaurant staff about serving timing, drawing out the suspense. When I returned, my heart was pounding with giddy anticipation. Leland was standing rigid by the table, my phone in his hand. Bingo! Your phone's been blowing up, he said quietly, holding it out to me. His expression was completely unreadable. Blank. Oh, thanks, babe, I said casually, taking it and glancing at the notifications as if nothing was wrong. Kian had followed the script perfectly. 3 texts, each more suggestive than the last. The final one read, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Your husband won't know what hit him." I watched Leland's face, waiting for that familiar jealous tension. For the anger. For the explosion. But instead, he just looked tired. So incredibly tired. Before I could gauge his reaction further, the restaurant host appeared at the entrance to our private room. "Excuse me, there's a gentleman here asking for Rowan, says he's expected." And there he was. Kian. Right on cue. He looked hot, in a way I knew would push all of Leland's buttons. He was holding a gift bag and wearing that cocky smile that always got him extra attention at the boutique. "Happy birthday, man," Kian said, extending his hand to Leland. "Rowan's told me so much about you." The room went silent. Everyone was watching. Exactly as I'd planned. Leland looked at Kian's outstretched hand. Then at me. Then back to Kian. And then, to my absolute shock, he shook it. "I bet she has," Leland said quietly. His voice was calm, too calm. "Thanks for coming." Wait. What? Where was the jealous outburst? The confrontation? The drama? This wasn't following my script at all. "Babe," I jumped in, trying to salvage the situation. "This is Kian. He's a friend from work." I emphasized the word friend just enough to raise suspicion. "I know who he is, Rowan," Leland replied calmly. "You've been texting him all week." My heart skipped a beat. How did he? "Your passcode is still your birthday, Rowan," he said, his voice so low that only I could hear it. It was flat, emotionless. "You never changed it." I forced a laugh. It was too loud, too sharp. "Oh my God, everyone. This is getting crazy. Kian is just a customer from the boutique who's been helping me plan Leland's surprise." Kian looked confused. "Surprise? You told me." "The cake?" I interrupted desperately, my voice shrill. "Let's bring out the cake." As the staff wheeled in the elaborate chocolate cake I'd ordered, I tried to regain control. "Happy birthday to my amazing husband," I announced, moving to stand next to Leland for the obligatory couple photo. He stepped away. "A single, deliberate step." "No, thank you," he said. The room was so quiet you could hear the candles flickering. Sloane was staring at her plate. Grant looked like he wanted to disappear into the wallpaper. Leland's dad had that same pained expression he'd had at our wedding when I'd made that joke about being pregnant just to see his reaction. "Don't be so dramatic," I hissed at Leland under my breath. "It's your birthday party." "That one, is it?" He looked around the room at the stunned faces of our friends and his colleagues. "Because it feels like another opportunity for you to embarrass me." The night imploded spectacularly after that. Leland walked out without another word. He didn't run. He didn't storm out. He just left, leaving me standing next to that stupid, expensive cake with everyone staring at me. His dad followed him, shooting me a look on his way out. A look that said everything his politeness wouldn't let him verbalize. Kian awkwardly backed toward the exit, muttering something about a misunderstanding. One by one, guests made their excuses and fled, until only Sloane and Grant remained. "What the hell just happened?" I demanded, collapsing into a chair. My perfect party was ruined. It was just a joke. Why is everyone acting like I committed a crime? Sloane sighed. She exchanged a look with Grant that made my skin crawl. It was a look of pity. "Rowan," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "You invited another man to your husband's birthday party and set it up to look like you were cheating on him. What did you think was going to happen?" "It was going to be funny," I insisted. "Once everyone realized it was a prank." "That's not a prank, Rowan," Grant interrupted, surprising me. He rarely spoke against me. "That's just cruel." "Oh, come on," I scoffed, waving my hand dismissively. "Leland's just being oversensitive, as usual. He'll cool down. He'll be back home by morning." But the knot in my stomach suggested otherwise. "I don't think so, Rowan," Sloane said quietly. "Not this time." They left shortly after, leaving me alone. Alone with a full cake and an empty room I'd still have to pay for. I drove home fuming, rehearsing all the ways Leland had overreacted, how he had ruined the night I worked so hard to plan. But Leland wasn't home. His side of the closet was conspicuously emptier. His shoes were gone. The bathroom counter was missing his toiletries, his toothbrush, his razor. A cold dread, something unfamiliar, started to creep up my spine. I called him. Straight to voicemail. I called again. Voicemail. With each unanswered ring, my anger morphed into something else. Something I hadn't felt in a very long time. Panic. "This is ridiculous," I texted him. "You're seriously leaving over a joke?" No response. "After everything I did for your birthday?" Nothing. "You're just proving my point about being dramatic." Silence. By morning, I'd left 17 voicemails and 32 texts, ranging from angry and demanding to pleading and pathetic. I called his office, but Corinne, that snake, said he'd taken personal days and she couldn't help me further. 3 days of agonizing, echoing silence later, I got an email. Not a call, not even a text, an email. Like I was some business acquaintance he was severing ties with. "Rowan, I've moved out. I have been planning this for weeks, as I realized our relationship has become irreparably toxic. I have documented the pattern of emotional manipulation, public humiliation, and gaslighting I have experienced. I have consulted a lawyer, who advised me to inform you that I will be filing for divorce. My father will collect the rest of my belongings on Thursday. Please do not be there when he comes. Leland." I read it 4 times. 5. Convinced it was another joke. A taste of my own medicine. It had to be. I called Sloane, my hands shaking, tears finally starting to fall. I expected sympathy. "Did you know about this?" I demanded the second she answered. Her hesitation told me everything. "He mentioned he was unhappy, Ro." "Unhappy?" I shrieked. "He's leaving me over a stupid joke." "Rowan," she said, her voice careful, measured. "He's been recording your conversations for months. He played me one. The one where you threatened to tell his boss he was having an affair if he didn't come home from that work conference early." I stopped. I remembered that. That was just to get him to come home. I didn't mean it. "He said you go through his phone but explode if he touches yours. That you isolate him from his family. That you constantly compare him to other men to put him down. So now you're on his side completely?" My voice rose with disbelief. "Some friend you are." "I tried to warn you, Rowan. That day at the boutique, when you told me your hilarious birthday plan, I explicitly told you it was a bad idea. You didn't listen." I hung up on her. This couldn't be happening. Leland wasn't the type to actually leave. He was the reliable one. The steady one. The one who always came back. The one who always, eventually, forgave me. It's been 3 months. 3 months of living alone in this big, empty house we bought together. 3 months of jumping every time my phone buzzes, hoping, praying it's him. 3 months of slowly, painfully accepting that he's actually gone. The divorce papers arrived yesterday. Not through a lawyer. Through Sloane. Apparently, she's been helping him get his affairs in order for weeks. Some friend. She stood in my doorway, all fake sympathy, handing me the manila envelope. "He didn't want to pay for a process server," she explained awkwardly. "He thought this would be less embarrassing for you." "Less embarrassing?" As if anything could be more humiliating than having your so-called best friend deliver divorce papers from your husband. The husband who, by the way, completely emptied our joint savings account the day after his birthday disaster, leaving me scrambling to cover the mortgage alone on my part-time boutique salary. The filing paints me as emotionally abusive. Can you believe that? Me, abusive. It lists all these incidents of what he calls gaslighting and manipulation. He even included transcripts of conversations he secretly recorded. Who does that? What kills me isn't just losing Leland. It's that he made me look like the villain. Everyone has taken his side. Even Kian stopped texting after that night, like I'm suddenly radioactive. The cake, that stupid chocolate cake, sat in our refrigerator for 2 weeks after the party. I couldn't bring myself to throw it out. It was the only thing that stayed when everything else fell apart. When it finally started to mold, I sat on the kitchen floor and ate one last piece before dumping the rest in the trash, crying over chocolate frosting like some pathetic rom-com character. Sometimes, I scroll through old photos of us, trying to pinpoint when things changed. There's one from last Christmas. He's looking at me instead of the camera. I never noticed before how tired his eyes looked, how forced his smile was. Was he already planning his escape then? Had I really been that awful? No. No. I refuse to accept all the blame here. Relationships take two people. He could have tried harder to understand my sense of humor. He could have been less sensitive about a few innocent jokes. He could have talked to me instead of sneaking around, recording our private conversations and consulting lawyers behind my back. That's the real betrayal, not my harmless prank. Yesterday, I texted Kian, just to see. He responded right away, suggested we meet for drinks. As I got ready, putting on lipstick in the bathroom mirror where Leland's things used to be, I thought about what Sloane had said on the phone before I hung up on her. He's doing well, Rowan. He seems lighter, somehow. Maybe that's what I need, too. To move on. To feel lighter. The divorce papers sit unsigned on the coffee table. Tomorrow I'll sign them. I tell myself that every day. Tomorrow, I'll finally accept that my marriage ended because of a joke gone wrong. But tonight, I'm meeting Kian. After all, I'm single now, right? Leland made sure of that when he walked out and left nothing but cake behind.